Hello, hello. How's it hanging? I'm sorry I'm barging in with this stupid greeting, but today I wanted to talk about my third book. I'm actually writing a third book already, having not published or being able to publish the second yet, but you know, a writing career goes on. And it's an emotional roller coaster for me. Why? Because I actually have stories that I wrote like in my youth when I was younger. And these stories are from the late 80s, the beginning of the 90s, and they have much in it from my life then at that moment. Especially like the school I went to, um, the places we went out with our friends, stuff like that. It's actually it revolves around the person that lives in the city where I lived in, and it has a lot about that. It has some friends that have that are based a little bit on my friends, not overly based on not the same person, of course not, but bits and pieces of people that then came together in a character. And the first story, because it's gonna be a stories mostly. I think the longest one I've finished, it's about 120, 125 pages, maybe a little more. And it revolves around a guy who discovers that the new boyfriend of one of his classmates has some strange powers. And the entire premise of that story is actually built on an encounter that I had in in the 80s, somewhere in the mid 80s. And that was one of my classmates. She brought with her new boyfriend. And I got the feeling this guy, he's like a shady guy. And he is like, he looked a lot like the Italian drug kingpins of the series Miami Vice. And the whole premise of that story is starting from that, and that's just a single thing that happened in my life, which inspired an entire story. And the story I just mentioned, Miami Vice, the story will mention a lot of movies and like stuff and music from the 80s and the mid 80s and the late 80s, because it's like in the mid 80s, so it's not the late 80s, not yet. It's from a little the mid 80s, and it has a lot of references to music and to films from that era. And the story, it's important to know, I wrote at that time the story in Dutch, so I had to translate it from Dutch into English, and I actually wanted to do something that is very difficult. I wanted to make the names of the cities and the towns that are mentioned in this book. I wanted to make them look like the names in Dutch, albeit translated to English, which is not always the best thing to do. But anyway, um, apart from that, it brought back a lot of memories from my childhood. And a lot of my childhood is actually in the character, in the main character of that person, of the protagonist, the main protagonist. He loves movies, horror movies, science fiction flicks. He loves them. He was a new waver like I was. The music, The Cure, the Sisters of Mercy, Skinny Puppy, you name it. He loved those bands. and it's all through the story. It comes back a little, and the relationship with my parents. A little bit of it is in there. Not. It's all based on stuff that I actually experienced. Not all of it, because it's a horror book. It's not fantasy. It's not science fiction. It's horror, and it's about a guy who developed strange powers, and who has a mind like nobody's gonna be able to hurt him. So he wants to beat the man, and he kills everybody, or at least some of the people who are in his way, and he kills them. And it is the story about a guy who is still growing up, who is in his last year of middle school or high school. I don't know exactly how you call it. And he's in the middle of that, getting to know a girl, and this thing happening to him. And it's a bit going to, it's, as I said, it was the last year of his school at the moment, and it's a bit about endings, and about evolving, and about growing up amidst a situation where people die, friends die, lovers die. It's a little bit of that, and as I told you, an emotional roller coaster for me, because of the memories that all came flooding back from that period. I hope I wasn't too confusing, but in the meantime, my first book is still available, and I will also, of course, let you know when the second book is available, but I haven't heard anything from the copyright agency yet, so it's a waiting game. I hope you liked a bit of what I thought about, what I talked about, and I hope it intrigues you and maybe makes you look forward to my other books and stories. And the other one that's still available, the link will be in the description as always. So I hope everybody is well on your side. You can always tell me that in the comments. Are you okay? Is everything all right with your family and stuff? I would be very glad to hear about you. So see you next week.